Welcome to Drop the Story. Today, I have on the show Naim Ferguson. Thanks so much for being here, bro.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me. Thank you for creating the space.
As an accomplished entrepreneur, Naim brings a desire to shift perspectives on work, products, services, and how we show up for our community with a conscious intention. He has led businesses and ventures in technology, publishing, film, ocean sports, music, and nonprofit movements. Naim's recent work with HHH in the aftermath of the Maui fires transformed his approach to leadership and being of service. Well, I'm so grateful that we have this chance to be on the show together, have this chat. I often see you walking on the beach with your dog and see you in the community. I used to circle with you regularly in men's circle. And it's just a privilege and an honor to know you and be able to be with you, because I really appreciate the man that you are and the leadership roles that you facilitate and hold in this community.
Lands for me a lot, feel it, appreciate it. And yeah, I see you and your gifts and how you show up as well. And I think you have an ability to bring the best out of people. And I feel that when I'm around you. So thank you for showing up.
Definitely. So I'll just start with a little check-in. Yeah, where are you right now? What's present for you?
Yeah, well, it's Independence Day. We kind of started by saying Happy Interdependence Day, which I like that. Reminds me of my connection to my family, my partner and our daughters. And yeah, we have a really beautiful thing going there and really inspired about that right now. So I'm checking in with gratitude, love, inspiration. I'm inspired. Got some new things coming up in my life that it's coming through and it's inspiring me currently. So coming out of the fires and, potentially learning to harvest the seeds that we've planted since the fires and figuring out what that looks like.
Yeah, nice. And I'll go as well. I'll just check in with this feeling of gratitude again for being able to sit with you and share some space. Really feeling the need to check my ambition and be present with what's possible in the day-to-day and not overburden myself with expectations. And yeah, just the overwhelm that can cause.
Yeah, I feel that.
So
You've taken on a lot.
I've got the two little ones in the house with my wife, and yeah, our littlest one is teething right now, so she is having a rough one. So we're just riding those waves and not getting a ton of sleep. I've been on the couch literally
at night, yeah.
trying to catch up so I can be present and be of service during the day. So big respect to my wife, who's not getting as much sleep, and yeah, being really the caretaker, the nourishing mother. So
wow. Yeah, I'm imagining you right now in that situation. My daughter's 18, so it's looking back at those times, and it does seem like yesterday. But also, yeah, I feel a lot of respect for you. I've seen you show up with your family in such a beautiful way, both you and your wife. So.
And other times it's like, oh my God, I'm failing.
Yeah, and a critic once again. I guess that's also an opportunity to grow. It's like befriending the inner critic is like a challenger, to strive to be a better version.
A challenger. I like that word.
Yeah. Language is so important. How do we shift our way of thinking and speaking to each other? And I guess specifically that inner voice has been really an interesting challenge for me. It's like, okay, how can I change the language so I can help understand it better? Yeah. And
it reminds me of how in men's work in circle, sometimes we do actually go, hold on a sec, can I challenge you right now? Can I actually give you this mirror that I think you might need to see?
Yeah, or it's practicing being in the challenge itself, whether it's right or wrong. Like, can we be comfortable in that situation, in that trigger of challenge? Actually, last night, recently, I had something come up in my relationship, not a major thing, but like enough to bring back a memory of a past relationship that felt challenging. And I saw an old pattern, and I just was like, okay, I'm gonna be with this and really be with it. And I'm really interested in design, human design, and I have an emotional wave, so I have an emotional authority. So it takes time for me. I don't have a sacral response. Maybe you do. You have sacral?
I have emotional as well.
Okay. So it takes time for me, and I've learned to like just give it time. Don't make up a story. Drop the story, and see what unfolds. I woke up this morning with such a gratitude for myself. Like, yeah, bro, you did it. You know, like went through the challenge, felt the emotional wave, got to see the mental, the emotional, the different aspects of it, unpack it for myself, and then shift out of that pattern, which felt like it happened. But yeah, I think being able to sit and challenge, which we do in Circle, is such a gift and opportunity to strengthen our emotional well-being.
When the critic comes up for you, and you do feel like you're telling yourself the story that, everything that you're trying to accomplish is not enough, or you don't have the capacity for that, how do you work with that?
I think the process is you got to come back to the inner relationship, right? So how do I want to treat myself, right? And like parts work is really useful, I think, for helping to find perspective. And if you can see yourself as being multiple versions, there's your protector, or there's your inner child, there's different versions, and you can learn to bring them together. So perhaps that's one way of like just approaching it. It's like, okay, there's my judge showing up. I'm gonna lean into that. I'm not gonna just let him run, on that train track and take me down, because where is it gonna lead? It's probably gonna lead to not good feelings, first of all, for myself or the day that's coming. So it's like, okay, thank you. You're challenging me, right? What is there? How can I integrate this? So take it in a neutral space. I think that's a super important part to like training the inner voice, which it's interesting as it's coming up, because a part of my life right now is all about learning what I'm calling, and I'm writing a book on it, I'm calling Self-Guardianship, which came about because I really didn't know anything about healthy boundaries. Everyone talked about healthy boundaries. I heard, it looked like this or it looked like that, or, Brené Brown talks about it, and, it's an interesting term because it's healthy and boundaried. So I'm like, okay, healthy means like it's done in a good way, doesn't hurt people, and a boundary is like something you don't cross. But as I thought about it, I'm like, they kind of cancel each other out a little bit. And it's a good way to communicate something and make you think about it, but it felt for me I needed to like understand it differently. A boundary is also something, like I have a boundary around my house, and my dog can't leave that boundary, he's stuck. So there's something about that didn't kind of work for me. So I kind of see it differently. So I see it as like self-guardianship it's maintaining my own inner well-being, as well as allowing or not allowing what comes in and out, deciding what is the energy. Is it neutral, for example, or is it hurtful? Is it loving, right? There's different ways that this energy is coming in and out of our lives or being held within us. So being aware. So it's kind of an internal work, but it's also looking out. So I'm looking out around me and like, what's coming in? What do I want to come into my conscious perimeter?
Maybe you could speak a little bit to the idea of what a guardian is to you in general. Because oftentimes we think of being a guardian of others, or being a guardian of like a place, or, a group of people, like the warrior archetype. But oftentimes we don't, think of like, how do we guard our own, emotional vibration, or really take care of the little boy or little girl inside. Yeah.
I mean, it connects back to parts work, because I think it does begin with that relationship with the inner child. It's like when I'm with my daughter, I'm her guardian. There's an energy that I show up in. My father energy is alive. My warrior energy is alive. My lover energy is alive. All of those archetypes are available. I talked about this recently too, that I think the king is the father. Like that is where it all does come together.
Certainly a lot of sacrifice. A lot of service.
The ability to serve and be served. and then bringing those other elements together, the other archetypes of the warrior and the lover, for example, the child. So guardianship to me is like that energy. It's like the father energy. And take it further, then there's masculine and feminine, so there's also the mother. So how can I learn to create a new relationship with the idea of mother? Not necessarily my mother, but mother. How can I create a new idea of a relationship with father? And then how can I bring those and cultivate them and bring that to my life for child? So it's not necessarily me as much as it is these energies that I'm learning to re-understand, So I think guardianship is like the father energy. It's also the mother. The mother will guard fiercely, and with compassion and love, the child. So if I can take that same energy I show up for my daughter with to myself, then that's probably a good energy to start with for guardianship. Yeah. But it's a two-way street. It's what's as within, so without. So it's very interesting. I think like two parts that need to be balanced out. If I'm solely within, I can be very much unavailable to what's around outside of me or afraid to go out. So it takes both. We got to cultivate that inner state of well-being. Mm-hmm. And that warrior that can go out to the world, not see everyone as an enemy, but know they can be. Not see everyone as a friend, but know they can be. It's a Zen saying, something similar to that. Everyone is a friend, everyone is an enemy. But an idea that, there's dangers out there. There's also beautiful opportunities and experiences. What are we bringing in? What are we attracting?
When it comes to setting boundaries for especially children,
mm-hmm.
where it doesn't have to look like this super bright line, like, no, don't do that, mm-hmm. ever. It can actually be like, hey, I noticed this. Maybe that's not the best way to try it. Or mm-hmm. what if we do this instead?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of things I'll let slide,
mm-hmm.
Almost erring on the side of like a little bit of permissive parenting. Because that's kind of what I wish I had growing up. I had a bit more, not heavy-handed, but just like very, very bright lines type parenting. And I noticed there are certain things where it's like, no, we're not going there. We're not doing that. This is a boundary.
We need both. Yeah, there's no question. I feel like that's part of like back to masculine, feminine. That's that masculine energy where we create the container.
Yeah.
And sure, we might make a change to that structure at some point. Maybe it doesn't have to be set in stone, but it's solid. I think that's part of it. It's like, no, this is a no. It's a boundary, like you said. Being okay with that. If we're just too wishy-washy and, it's just like, they're not going to learn like, oh, maybe I'll put my hand on the stove. Like, oh, maybe it's okay. It's like, no, that's a clear no. It's interesting that you're looking at this in your fathering, your parenting of your children.
I think every parent goes through it, wishing that they didn't have to be the disciplinarian, for example, or just the boundary setter. Mm-hmm. They wish they could just kind of have this like friendship relationship constantly. And I think there's an element of truth to that possibility, but it's not always there. Sometimes it takes more of like the leader, the king, who is willing to like lay down the law.
I'm curious with your upbringing.
Yeah. So
you showed me a lot of awareness by saying that you were raised with somewhat of a more stricter hand.
Yeah.
And now you're like, you notice yourself pushing against that.
A lot of my life has kind of leaned in that direction of being a bit more free-flowing.
So it's like your natural flow, your natural way, or does some of it come from like just experience?
For example, I remember, expectations that I should be performing at a high level in school, while performing at a high level in sports, while being an integral member of the household and doing my part. That just wasn't something that was available to me, like energetically. Like I don't find that I was able to stretch myself in so many directions.
Well, you're called to make that adaptation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's maybe part of like self-leadership right there, is like you're tracking not only what works for you, but what the world needs Like we need maybe more of that type of leadership, more invitation instead of dictation.
Yeah, it was really non-conformity, especially in my teenage years. You know, the rebellious nature of like, that doesn't sit right with me. Like, I don't want to do that. You know? And that looked like a lot of quote unquote failure at that age. Like, oh, I don't want to write that essay. Okay, well, here's your F. You know? So, yeah, I was constantly meeting boundaries in my own life and basically choosing which ones I was like, don't care about that one. Okay, I see why that exists. But that's kind of like the role of the child in my experience, is to test boundaries. Like that's really their job.
So true.
That's their experiment with life, is not just what can I get away with, but like, why does that really even exist?
Throwing the spaghetti on the wall.
Right.
Yeah. See what sticks, you know, see where does this field, you know, how does it look? What is the shape of this, of this reality?
When I was making the choice to leave high school and get my GED and go to college so I could study philosophy and psychology and just all this, you know, like very kind of deviant, you know, path stuff, my homeroom teacher at the time was asking me the question, like, you know, are you ever going to be able to finish anything again in your life?
Whoa.
Like laying on the shame, laying on the guilt.
Right.
Of that,
Yeah,
right?
they're motivating you with shame right there.
And I understand why she said it,
Yeah.
to get me to think. And it did get me to think. But I was so quick to answer. I was just like, yeah, I'm out of here. Yeah, this isn't working. And
Also, that's not how you want to be communicated to.
No, but she did it in a respectful way.
She
That's
did?
not the point.
Okay.
Like she was definitely giving me like a hard, you know,
Challenge.
for sure. Like kind of appealing to my inner critic. Like, hey, can I stimulate this kid to back down?
Right.
You know? And I wasn't willing to back down. And I chose the path less traveled.
Gotcha.
And it's gotten me to where I am today, and I'm so grateful for that.
But it stuck with you.
Yeah.
This idea of like finishing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And kind of, you know, the sense that like, okay, you want to walk your own path in life? Great. But no one's going to show you how to do it. At least not willingly. Like you're going to have to go seek that out.
Yeah.
You know?
It's not the path. Yeah, it's not the obvious path. It's the less traveled one, so you're going to have to figure it out. You're going to
not only that,
find your way.
You are going to have to learn what it means to uphold your commitments to yourself, because you won't be upholding them to, you know, a traditional boss that you show up 9 to 5 for work for. You got to show up for yourself and follow through on your own goals and really be, you know, this person of integrity on a whole new level. Because yeah, you're not just being like subservient or conforming to this very traditional dogma or patterning or conditioning of life. You're really like saying, actually, I'm gonna go figure it out for myself.
You're going to the edge.
Yeah.
You're going, so you're a waterman. So there's a connection.
That's a big statement, by the way.
Well, I mean, you are, and you're an amazing surfer, and you're out in the water, and you push yourself there, you discover yourself there, you pray there.
I do.
That's part of the territory, right? It's the liquid state, the unknown environment. The ground is moving, you know, and you're needing to find your way and make sense of this and have fun, hopefully, through it.
And get totally trashed in the process. Yeah. So being willing to get trashed.
So yeah, interesting. So I'm curious, how do you find your accountability and your discipline? Like what stuck with you from that moment that then carried you into maybe your surfing career, life, and
let's use surfing as the example.
Okay.
I don't have to wake up at 5 a.m. to go make sure that I'm there at first light, when it's glassy and the conditions are best, etc., and check the waves and their double overhead, and you know, go and paddle out to what could end up being like a total nightmare session, where I'm just getting thrashed on the inside, wave after wave on the head. Because that happens sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And we misjudge and we drop in late and face plant down a 12-foot drop. It's like, that's not fun, you know?
Scary.
That's scary.
Yeah, and then many times you're probably thinking this might not work out very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of
Or
like
might be the last one. Yeah.
might be a little bit of a hope and a prayer in some of those, like, but you pop up again.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something about that experience where you do see the incremental changes and you do feel yourself becoming more and more sovereign and confident in the process. And it's like, oh, this is powerful. Why would I back down from experience that makes me more powerful?
So you just keep coming.
You just keep going.
You return again.
Yeah.
Ehomai, return
Yeah.
again, return again.
Say that again? What is
Ehomai is like it's a Hawaiian chant,
Yeah.
but can be interpreted as the gathering, and the gathering of the coming, the returning.
Yeah.
Ehomai, return again, return again, return again. Go back to the ocean. Go back, go back, go back.
Yeah.
No matter how many times you get crushed or whatever, or
Yeah.
the good and the bad, keep coming back.
I'm sure in your paddling experiences, canoe paddling, there's times where you go out and you meet a gnarly headwind and it's chopping, blowing 40 knots. Like,
Yeah, right. I mean,
that can't be fun.
I think in relation to the metaphor of the ocean, paddling is a journey. It's an adventure. It's like life, and you take it one stroke at a time. And some days you're going out against the wind, and some days you're riding with the wind. You're riding with the swell. Some days you're doing it for fun. Some days maybe, like luckily with my job, I actually had opportunities to bring canoes to customers in Molokai. So there was one year where I would go with Mike and drop off canoes, and it's actually a job. It's like, all right, we're to paddle across the channel. But yeah, most of the time it's to test yourself. Like you said, this challenges me. This is exhausting. Halfway through, I'm like, why am I here? I'm thirsty, I'm hot, I'm sunburned. But there's like this beauty and this sense of connection to life that fuels you and feeds you, not just in that moment, but forever. Like it just opens up to you. I think the more you experience that, the more you get to touch that experience, the unknown, what it's like to be at the edge or in the flow state, as some call it, which I think it's that level of fear meets unknown meets skill development, strength development, experience.
Yeah. And it teaches you to lead yourself in a more profound way, because it's just you versus the elements.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's just you. Yeah, and your decisions are going to get you through it,
right.
Or lack of, good decisions or what have you. So you're constantly having to evaluate and reevaluate. Yeah.
That kind of brings me to just the topic of leadership in general. You have taken the role in many different aspects of life as a leader, in business, in social work, and in community building through men's work.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, why you feel called to do that and what makes you feel appropriate for that role.
I love this question. What is leadership? Because I think that's what leadership is. Asking better questions. Just asking questions, being curious, wanting to learn. And I think we're at a time where it's about discovering what's a better way, right? What is a more inclusive way? How can we discover things we haven't discovered yet? How do we learn to work together? How do we integrate, these different realms and worlds as we grow, as we expand? So I think leadership is curiosity. I think leadership is like what we talk about with Shem's above the line, open, curious, committed to learning. I think leadership is noticing the calling, feeling the call, and then asking yourself, is that calling for me? Or is that for all of us? Is that for, is this for me? And then if it's for you, you got to own it. You got to own it. It's time to show up. And what does that look like to you? And how can you do that in a good way? And then you're going to be challenged, right? That comes with leadership. You're going to be, anyone who steps out of the crowd is going to have, people say a target on their back, but I think it's more that you're just noticed, you're criticized. That's how we work as human beings. That's how we improve. Unfortunately, it's kind of how it works. So you're going to get challenged. And so in a way, like a big awareness for me has been like how pure am I in my intentions, and what energy am I coming with and showing up with. And if something's out of alignment in me, even if it's just a little tiny thing, it's gonna erupt. It's gonna disrupt, either for me or someone else. So learning to track that, be aware of it, and then own it, which I think is like being so true to the calling that you don't let the mistakes or the challenges keep you from the calling. Like, okay, grow, change, make the adaptation, shift, pass the ball. What's next? But own it, and then at some point, you got to give it away. You got to surrender. And that is when we realized that the calling was never ours to begin with. We heard it, we responded, we owned it, and then we let go. And then the surrender is a super important part, because that's when you can reevaluate what's the calling now. Maybe it's different. Maybe it's for someone else. And if you are in a leadership position and there's people listening to you, ask yourself, one of my favorite lines, are you in, are you out, or are you in the way? And being in means like, are you fully committed? Are you here? Are you present? Or do you have stuff that you need to take care of? Are you resourced? If you're not resourced, and maybe you're not the right person. Maybe it's time to go take care of your affairs before you're out helping others. And then are you in the way is really the energy there is like, am I fighting so hard for my agenda or for what I believe to be true, that I'm keeping what wants to happen from happening? And I'm seeing that by there being rifts in the team. I'm seeing, more and more struggle. The agenda that I have or the vision that I have is not coming together. It keeps running into blocks. That's when I go, oh, I'm in the way. And that's happened to me a number of times. And with the fire specifically, there was a time where I was really seeing a different vision for the organization. And as I started to help make that happen, I ran into, roadblock after roadblock. And rather than making people wrong, I realized that it was my turn to step away. So I did. It was a huge, moment. It was important for the movement. It was important for the organization. It was an important move for me.
That takes humility. And honestly, wouldn't we prefer to have leaders who have that ability to be self-aware and to ask questions of themselves, instead of like doubling down on mistakes and positions and saying, no, I was always right, and it was always them that made the errors, I
mean, that's the opposite. Above the line is below the line, which is closed, defensive, and committed to being right. Which is like, I'm right, and you're wrong, Yeah, it's a really good temperature gauge to figure out if you're in alignment or not. Are you above the line, or are you below the line? Yeah. And at that moment, I don't know if I was below the line as much as I could see that if I continued down that path trying to fight for this reorganization, that I would be, I'd have to go below the line, because I'd have to fight for it. I'd have to struggle. I'd have to, didn't want to happen that way. It ended up actually happening, but months later. The vision was wanting to come through, but it wasn't through me. It was through someone else, and it was exactly how I envisioned it, but it wasn't my job to make that happen. So it was amazing, and to recognize like surrender, or what's a better word for it? Acceptance. It's such a difficult thing in the mind, but energetically it actually feels so good, because life is working for you. If you believe it, it will, and it will rise to meet you, and it will be the wind underneath your sails, and you will have your needs met. But if you're struggling, you're fighting, you're trying to make everything happen, it's gonna be painful. It's gonna be a different type of struggle. Yeah.
Yeah, something that brings up for me is just how some people are uniquely qualified for different roles, and some people are kind of predisposed for leadership energy. You know, the ability to enroll, to enlist, to inspire, and, you know, hold the torch and say, we're going that way, and here's why. Will you join me? I think that's actually a really powerful thing. And, you know, not everyone can do that. So recognizing that some people like yourself have that. And, you know, also having the humility to realize that that's not the whole equation. That's just a piece of it.
It's just a piece, and there might be another person with that same makeup, you know, the same dynamic, the same design that can do that better, or in that moment is specifically configured for that move, and allowing them to run with it, you know. So yeah, thank you for seeing that. And I'm starting to really appreciate that that is part of my design. And I don't have a lot of those other skills that everyone has, but there's something in me that can get really inspired and really connected to a truth on something. And I see the vision and I feel the emotion. I think that's the other thing. It's like the emotion is the energy that we can all relate to. Like the ideas, you know, we'll argue over, but we'll all agree, like, let's help the people in Lahaina. Like, let's do this. No matter if you're, you know, Republican or Democrat, you know, you're gonna get behind that idea, and it's a feeling. You're actually not gonna get behind the idea, you can get behind the feeling of like, yeah, let's do this, because the heart opens. So I do feel like that's part of my, you know, gift or whatever, and I'm learning to understand it, you know, for the better, for worse, you know, like the shadow side of emotion is very hard to hold, you know.
Yeah, and getting down to the bottom line of it all, as you said, we're here to help. So are we actually doing it?
Yeah.
Are we being impactful? Or are we just making a mess?
Yeah, exactly. So another principle. So to reiterate, listen to the calling, check and see if it's for you, respond to the calling, own it, and then give it away, and then repeat. The other one, either in, you're out, or you're in the way. And the next one, which is probably the most important one when it comes to an organization, especially a nonprofit and disaster recovery organization: do no harm. Simple phrase, takes a lot of tracking and self-awareness to see, are we hurting somebody by helping? Like, man, I think it wasn't, you know, 3 or 4 days in that right away we started to see, you know, situations where ourselves and our team, our people, as well as others, especially people that were coming in from other locations, not from Maui, and, you know, trying to incorporate or install their version of how a hub should run, you know, or how something should be handled. How painful that was, how hurtful that was to the people that had been there and who actually understood and who knew. And some of these people weren't necessarily qualified in positions of leadership, or, you know, what have you, degrees in something or another. They were specifically, in my opinion, qualified for that role right there, and they were guided by something greater. And they were beautiful. They are beautiful human beings, and till this day are still being motivated and guided and supported in this movement, in this fire response. To unseat them or to, you know, create, you know, a problem for them, like, is it's really painful, you know, and especially if they're indigenous, you know, local Hawaiians, like, part of this this Aina, and, you know, you're from whatever, you know, coming in and you're dictating your version of things, you know, it's like, this is their land, you know, this is their heritage, this is hundreds or 1,000 years of family lines, and they care, like, you know. So do no harm doesn't necessarily mean, you know, don't be mean or toxic. It's like sometimes we're helping people, but we're actually hurting. And specifically with that one, like the white hero, like that's a painful trauma.
Savior complex?
The savior complex, all that, And I talked to Kaimana Lee the other day at the regatta, and she's an amazing Hawaiian human being. And right away we got into that conversation. It's just so important to have self-awareness, to not repeat these types of patterns that actually have another layer of pain. But another way to look at do no harm is also in our own relationships, right? So if we're a team bringing food or something like that, how are we working together and supporting that team? There was a moment where one of our solid volunteers was struggling, and I had no idea. And he's out there every day helping people, and he hadn't eaten in 2 or 3 days. He was sleeping in his car for weeks. He hadn't had a shower, in weeks, if not months. And it was like a wake-up call, when I noticed, when I talked to him, and it wasn't just him, it's all of these people, so many people that were volunteers that were helping from their heart, and they just couldn't they just weren't aware of their own taking care of themselves, right? And for the most part, I think that is coming from love, it was really coming from love. So I think being a good leader is also about tracking your team, making sure everyone's taken care of. Has everyone been communicated with? Did they feel seen? Are they nourished? Did they rest well? Was it their birthday recently? What's going on in their family? We've been, people in Lahaina, and the recovery for Lahaina has been going on for months, almost a year. I was next to people who've discovered their sister died, for example, one of the days while we're working. These moments were happening in people's lives that were really difficult and painful for them to traverse while they're out there doing this. So can we be supportive of each other? And, we're only as strong and able to do this work if we can take care of ourselves. So doing no harm to me also means there's potential harm or pain that's caused by not being fully present. And I experienced that, and I'm sure, maybe people watching this who know me experience pain through me, or through actions, or through, projections. I don't know if it's necessarily because of me, but maybe I didn't check in, maybe it was a look, maybe it was not supporting them with something. And because of the role I was in, or because of my ability to maybe help them, it caused pain for them. So it's a huge awareness for me of okay, you can hurt somebody without being hurtful.
Especially in the heat of the moment, when stakes feel very real, very high.
And back to leadership, if you're in a position where, even if I might not have thought myself as a leader in that moment, I was taking action, and maybe others saw me as that.
I saw you grab the mic.
Okay, so thank you. But there's an accountability to that role, or
yes.
And making, helping people, supporting people, listening to people, taking time to be present. I think that's where meditation and quiet time and time alone is so important.
Sure.
But that's another way that I think do no harm really stood out to me. So to recap, it's let's not be savior complex. Let's be really aware of the white hero stuff. Let's not try to force our way of doing things on others. Let's listen for the need before taking action. And then let's be really self-aware of our own resources. Are we resourced enough to show up to help people before we do? Because if not, we're probably gonna somehow, misstep and miss a beat and create some pain for somebody. And then the other one is am I supporting my team around me? Are they okay? Are their hearts been, reflected on, and are they feeling loved and supported? It's super important, I think, as a leader. You have this opportunity to really impact somebody with a smile, with a conversation, with sincerity, with presence. Why not do it? So I acknowledge my missteps and my failure to do so in those areas, and combination of just the urgency of the time that it was in, and then also maybe not taking my own self-guardianship be more present, to track my own resourcing. So I'm growing and learning, and I'm looking at this entire experience of seeds that have been planted that are going to continue to harvest, more information, more wisdom, more gifts for our whole community, all of us involved, for the years to come. So another principle that I wanted to share after Do No Harm is what got you here is not necessarily what gets you there. And I have a little story that goes with this principle, but the day after the fire, we couldn't get to the west side. The roads were blocked. And we have an army truck. We have a fleet of army trucks, 3 trucks. And we got permission to enter the fire zone. And one of the few organizations that could go there. And there's huge lines. Everything was backed up. And I'm trying to get through. We're driving this truck. And we're passing one block after another, and one traffic jam and another, and I literally just kept hearing, like, go here, go there. Like, there was even like a moment where I was driving straight in one direction, and this homeless guy looks at me on the side of the road, and he goes, "Hey, brother, no can," and he goes like this, and so I'm like, he's just a guide telling me to turn. So I turn and I go down this other road. And like someone else says something, they're not even like speaking to me. It was just like, I took it as like an internal guidance. And somehow I got on this other line, went behind these other people. And then, next thing you know, National Guard's with me, and we're getting an escort, into Lahaina. But it was like these little things, like we just had to keep pivoting, and like, just because we got the permission doesn't mean we're getting in. And just because we're in the line doesn't mean we're going to get through. So like, you're just going to have to keep pivoting, shifting, and adapting and growing, and like it will continue. The Wuhana Nui Ao, Great Spirit, the calling, is going to continue to show you the next step. And so that principle really locked in for me, and I tracked that energy for the rest of the fire response. Like for months afterwards, I was like, okay, what's happening? What's next? And I could feel it. Oh, this means this. I was like really taking the signs from the universe. It sounds a little woo-woo, but that's what happens. And now I'm looking at it in the sense of like, okay, what's the arc of the fire response in Lahaina? We've gone through so many different phases. Everyone knows it's changed every day for the last 11 months. And we're really entering a whole new territory now because for a lot of reasons. There's so many opinions, the fire's, kind of more distant in our mind. The issues are more the subject of the issues are more regarding politics and housing. There's a lot of organizations that are involved. There's been a lot of money that's been coming in. Where is that going? So what got you here is not necessarily what gets you there. It's just another way of going, well, how do we, again, pivot, reorganize, and continue to respond to the need? So just to bring it back to Triple H, we had a meeting yesterday at GEM, which is Global Empowerment Movement, amazing organization. Uncle Kimo Kale was there, and we just talked about this subject, like what's next? Like where do we put our energy? And is it time for us to step away? Like, we've used up all the donation funds, a lot of it. We've been doing $20,000 of produce every week. We're doing, for a while, we're doing 2,000 meals a day. We're down to like 300 meals a day. All this money that came in went directly to Lahaina, so like hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's amazing. It's like super inspiring to like look at how much impact was made. But now is it time for us to just close up that and focus on something else, or let things go? And now it's like we're starting to get a new calling, and it's really, our mission has been farm to hungry, food from the land, made with love in the kitchen, given for free. So our attention is going to the farms, to the Aina. That's the real
sovereignty.
The sovereignty in the long term, because the Costco's and all those other options are not what's going to support our community when the next fire happens, or the next hurricane, or whatever it is. Like there's going to be more disasters. And if not more frequently, because of everything that we're seeing in our world as we're escalating. Wars, there's the environmental issues, the water issue, the economic issues. There's a lot at stake right now. There's a lot of things that are pivoting that I feel are going to create more intense and survival moments that we're going to have to get through as a community. And in order to do that, we're going to need to really learn leadership, resiliency. We're going to have to get some of the basic principles of living off the land, living and working with the land. The basic human needs: food, water, shelter. And how can we resource that? Yeah. How do we live in that sovereignty and that state of connection? So there's a lot of skills we're going to have to learn in order for that system to work, in order to rebuild these systems. And that's what I think the next frontier is, because the structures have to be restructured, And in order to do that, we're going to need to learn to communicate together. We're going to need to learn new methods and systems for leadership. We're going to have to do a lot of personal growth work, that we got to be way more self-aware, if we're going to survive together. Speaking of which, do you know your neighbors? How well do you know them? After the fire, a lot of us realized how important neighbors were. Neighbors were the reason why, a lot of people died. It was 102 people, but thankfully it wasn't thousands, because neighbors knew other neighbors and they're helping each other get out. And then those neighbors then were helping each other get food and helping each other get clothing, helping each other find housing. So I remember watching that and going, wow, I need to get to know my neighbors. And I remember the first week I was checking in with all of them. How you guys, and I've been living in my neighborhood for years, and it's like once a week I'm like, oh, what's up, brother? It's now I'm taking more initiative. So it's another way that I feel we got to learn to be more connected to our community.
It's like another form of wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. When the next one happens, I've been saying the community is our immunity. That's the, like you said, the wealth, and we've got to learn to work together, and we've got to see values differently. It's so much focus has been on infrastructure, or structure, period. What about culture? The things that we put to the side is oh yeah, when we have time, Actually, the culture is what got us through the fire, not the infrastructure. Not to throw anyone under the bus, but the police were giving people the wrong directions. The fire department went to get water. There was no water. I know everyone was doing the best they could, but the infrastructure failed. Yeah. The electricity
wasn't turned on.
The Miko, who we're all paying, hundreds of dollars a month to, their system for a hurricane, and how to, what? This is your system for this kind of disaster. It was so fragile. Obviously they're being held to account on this, and I hope that they do continue to be held to account on it, and that we just take this opportunity to improve. But like I said, it was the culture that got us through. It was the Hawaiians. It was the Lahaina. It was Okua, putting God first, praying. Those days, we were praying before everything. That's another principle in our booklet is Okua first. In other words, pray first and God first, because there's something that's really special about prayer. We prayed before we started our podcast. It's a humility. We humble and we listen. So no matter what your spiritual practice is or who your God is, if you just stop and pray, it's this beautiful experience of openness and connection. And I feel that's another part of the culture that thankfully we're paying more attention to now because of the disaster.
And you've had such a unique experience, in my opinion, of being immersed in canoe paddling culture, and getting to experience this Hawaiian heritage in a really deep way, being on 6-man boats, and knowing what it means to be in teamwork, and how to share the load to get to the goal.
Yeah, those are all coming through. One of the biggest rally calls amongst the community after the fire was the canoe ohana, the va'a ohana, because in the, Kokimo Keo would say The canoe doesn't discriminate who sits on her seat. All are welcome. Just pick up the paddle and put your paddle in the water. If you know Uncle Kimo Kale, these are like his, famous words that he repeats a lot, but it's like so true and so unifying. When we can come together and we get in the va'a, we put our hearts together, we put our sweat, and we reach forward. We plant that paddle, we plant that seed, that new intention. We reach. We come a little bit out of our comfort zone, we put in the effort, and then once that's done, we're moving, and then you do it again. So there's something really significant about the canoe culture and the connection to the moku, the island, the mokunui, how we work together, how we sustain, how we float, and the Hawaiian culture, the principles of Hawaiian culture. Like, the Hawaiians know this already. Like, they understand the leadership principles. It's baked into the culture and to the practices. If we can actually turn the volume down on everything else and allow them to lead, like, that's back to leadership principles. It's like getting out of the way. It's not us white males that need to be in the front, or whatever. I'm using that because sometimes that's the old story, and that's also the way things have gotten awry with the capitalist culture. So, let's make space, get out of the way, and let the Kanaks come in and share their mana'o, their wisdom. The people of this land decide, what they want best for Lahaina, for Maui, bringing their principles together. Their voices can guide the choices. And, that's my relationship with the Hawaiians and the Alakai, which was like a Hawaiian word for leader, but the torchbearer, the Alakai's at Lahaina Strong. That's what they're standing up to and stepping into, and I fully support. And I can't wait to see what happens next with that.
Beautiful. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm really looking forward to this book you're writing, because I can already feel the distillation process that you're going through right now of just revisiting all of these moments over the past year, and feeling into the power and lessons within each of them.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, so self-guardianship is what I'm working on. It's really more of an exploration for my own curiosity, and then as I got into it, I was like, oh, this is something valuable in the sense that it's hard to find, and I want to share. And so I'm going to put an ebook out, and it's going to be a good practice for me too. I'm in sales and marketing, so I'm like, okay, let me apply my skills towards something that I've created or has come through me, and for something that could have a positive impact, and also sharpen my skills and tools along the way. But the basic principle is in self-guardianship is it's kind of a visual experience. So I'm kind of writing it as a way to be remembered through an image or through images. But the image that I'll share with you is imagine sitting in meditation at the front of a beautiful, clear, crystal well of water. And anytime you can dive in and swim or drink of that water. And that's the well of being. It's your well-being. It's your connection to spirit. It's a connection to your truth. That's what keeps you replenished. Surrounding that is the garden of your heart, where you also can water the seeds that you're planting in your life, what you're creating, the things that matter to you, the relationships that matter to you. Surrounding that is your natural neutrality, which is your, the way we connect with the world outside of us. And it's neutral. It's not one way or another, and it's natural. It's like how you are. It's who you are. Me, you, whoever I let in, right? It's like that's the energy I want to uphold around me. And that's protected. So we're not just out there in the open in the sense that anything come in. We actually have a conscious perimeter, which I like that term instead of healthy boundary, which I think most people refer to boundaries, healthy boundaries. Didn't quite land for me, but I like this conscious perimeter. It's like something that can move with me and I'm aware of. And that is protected by a soul sentinel, which is an extension of myself that then goes to that gate and can allow in or remove those that are part of my life, right? And yeah, that's kind of the visual. So if you can be with that and make it a beautiful space that aligns to you, you know, is it tropical? Is it mountainous? You know, is there lots of water? You know, what type of garden are you planting? What kind of plants do you have there? What does that well of being feel like and look like to you? And what's outside as well, you know, like, are you on the shore, you know, or, you know, what other energies are you surrounded with? And that is, to me, what I feel is self-guardianship as a visual experience that I can bring with me wherever I go, and allow me to take more leadership in my life, as well as lead within and without. Without, you know, hopefully, you know, doing less harm. You know, I think I'm going to probably make mistakes, but, you know, do no harm being a really important principle to me. And still being open, you know, how can I be open, loving, and vulnerable in a sense, but also in my my power, my strength, and know it's not for me, you know, and go, that's not for me. And I don't need to hate you for not being right for me. Like, that's another beautiful thing I've learned through this fire, was that there can be so many people that come into our lives that we can not agree with and have so much value in the community, or for their life, or for the world around them, but it's just not necessarily for us. You know, it's allow them to come and go, recognize that just another extension of us, but not one that we need in our conscious perimeter. So I don't need to hate on them, they're just another avatar doing their thing. And, you know, I don't need to get aka, I don't need to tangle, you know, in a positive or negative way, just let it go. And that allows me the freedom to be able to move throughout without getting, you know, those tangled, you know, situations that might pull me off my center or keep me from being able to show up in presence, you know. So yeah, anyway, thank you for listening to me. I know it's kind of out there. It's still yet to be reformed or to be refined. So I'm bringing it all together. I'm working on it now.
And when it comes to the creative process of sitting down to the blank page or the open laptop these days, you know, that is one of the main things that I want people to take away from this podcast, and really just from all the guests that I have on, about what it takes in life to go after your goals, go after your dreams, show up, and actually, you know, stick with it long enough to see the finish line. Yeah. And writing a book is one of those things that you hear people talk about, where it's just like a grind at times, you know? Yeah. So,
or how do you make time for it, you know?
Also, yeah. Do you have any parting tips or just experiences that you've encountered in your process of doing this so far?
Yeah, thank you. For the creative process? Yeah, so I do a number of different types of creative work, and from photography to, you know, I do sales and service is what I'm calling it now. Basically, I help to, you know, bring people's mission to life and guide them through the transition process. So whether that's a movement or that's a business or it's personal growth work, you know, sometimes it's all kind of related, right? So it's an interesting intersection. I kind of see myself as a change agent in that way. But the creative aspect is, I think, really what motivates any of that, because it's the curiousness to create, you know, and make it beautiful. And my guiding principles are truth, beauty, and grace. So is it true? You know, that's the motivation. You know, can I bring truth forward? You know, stick with it. Am I being truthful? Is it true for me? Beauty is like what I get to experience through that truth, right? So the beauty all around me, the beauty of my relationships, the beauty of life, the beauty of nature, you know, or the beauty that we're creating. You know, make it beautiful, you know, enjoy the beauty. And then the grace is like, no matter what happens, right, can we experience it through grace, and can we deliver it with grace? You know, even if it's painful or challenging or, what are we leaving behind, you know? What are we leaving behind? Can we do so with grace? So my process right now, I think, is I'm improving the discipline. This is definitely important to make myself available to all the different ideas and aspirations that I have. Staying in the creative space is super important. So doing things for fun, right? Doing things because they're motivating as well. And using tools that help to offset my deficits. So recently, it's been AI. That's been the tool I've been relying on. So it's been super helpful for me to be able to have different threads within my different AI apps that I play with. I have different threads for different projects, for different aspects of my life. So I have like a relationship guide where I program that thread specifically with certain, psychologists and doctors and authors that I look up to that are using certain methods and techniques, so I can chat to this thread as those people. I have a executive assistant that organizes my day and then gives me pep talks and pumps me up throughout the day, so I can stay in the energy and the frequency that I need to be in, so I can be inspired and be in the beauty and the grace. So that's definitely one of the shifts for me is in the last year or so is bringing AI into self-organization, and I highly recommend it for people. It's another reason why I have explored this idea of visual learning to a deeper extent, which I'm going to bring forward in this book as well. But it's, an example is vision boarding. So if you have an idea or a vision, use your AI to create an image of that instantly, so you can see what that looks like. So if you're meditating and you're thinking about your day, or like, oh, it's a 4th of July weekend, I want to go, have a beautiful day on the ocean with my family, eating hamburgers, whatever, right? Put that vision into the AI, and like in 30 seconds you have an image, and you can see what that looks like, and then you make adaptations to it. I love that. I do that all the time now. Or if I meet somebody and they're like, oh, I really need this in my life, or I want this, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna take notes, and I create a little vision board for them and send it to them. And they're like, what? And it has an impact, Another tool for me, I think, is like, how do we bridge between the artificial world and the conscious? So I kind of see creativity is a combination of all these realms. It's emotional, it's spiritual, and then it's physical. So we're bringing things to life in the physical realm from our emotional experiences, and then from our conscious, thought or ideas. Creativity kind of brings that Venn diagram in an overlap. So AI will never be able to be in a conscious emotional intelligence, but it can do things in a cognitive way that are connected to those things, and we can improve in our conscious intelligence and our emotional intelligence if we offload the cognitive intelligence to AI, to the artificial world. And if you're adapted to that, or if you have a skill in emotional intelligence or other realms, might as well explore that deeper. We're going to need those skills more and more as we expand, I believe, as the technology becomes more integrated. Our conscious intelligence is going to have more ability to expand. So I think that's the future. So art being a form of that. So practice for me is like, okay, going from a meditative state and then merging that using AI into a cognitive artificial state. So I'll even do client consults where we'll talk about an issue. We might use like sticky notes and Venns and flow charts, get all the stuff on the wall, and then just meditate, calling in maybe an image or a color or a vision. And then we'll go from that to like what came up, and it could be really random. Oh, I got this word or this color, or I saw this image. And think, okay, boom, and I put that into the AI and start spitting out ideas of how these things can interconnect. And then immediately go to the design board, and immediately go to Basecamp or project management and start going, okay, what does this look like? And within an hour, you can have an idea start taking shape. So that's another creative process of like merging realms of conscious and artificial. I call it artificial world. So anything that we have to do every day, like paying taxes and rent and mortgage and even technology for that matter. I think, that's the artificial realm. And we have to learn to work there. In the spiritual, the emotional, those things don't really matter, but they affect you. So it's like we gotta somehow get good at this while also knowing that this is what really matters. Our consciousness, our emotional connections, our physical realm, like our health. So how do we bring all these things together? And I think that's what technology can do. So yeah, and I think the more we actually put intention into that, then we're above the line with AI. So back to the leadership principle, if we see it as a negative, or we see it as a cop-out, like, oh, I'm gonna have AI do everything for me, right? Like we're using it in that extent, we go below the line energetically. And yeah, maybe it takes over, or maybe it causes a lot of problems. But if we can see it as, no, this is an ability for us to shift all this toil that we've been putting into the artificial realm, and we get to now put it in the conscious realm, which has quantum impact. In other words, one thing equals many. And we can get out of this world of busyness. So that's what I'm calling in. So let's expand in our consciousness and our emotional intelligence, and let's also, hold ourselves to account so that we can show up, in the artificial realm. Let's create the abundance. Let's create the lifestyle that we want to live in. Let's have the impact with our businesses. Let's understand these other ways that, we're going to need to figure out to survive. But let's always remember who we are.
Man, it's been quite a journey for you in the last year, and I'm grateful again to have you share, the wisdom from it in this book that you're writing. So
thank you. Yeah, I look forward to. I mean, it's coming through. So the way I look at it is like it's a gift to have gone through that experience, and it's a gift to break it down into what are these lessons that are there to be understood and learned and shared.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time to be here with us today and to drop in.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate you.
Well, until next time.
Okay, let's go.
Appreciate you.
Oh.